Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa akibatu lil mustaqim wala rudwana ila ala dalimin. Innani altay subhanahu wa ta'ala amtanani wa shukri wa Muhammadan huwa sayyidina makbubana inhu kana sayyidin mursalin salawatu Allah ta'ala wa salamuhu alayhi wa ikwanina wa ikwatina fi din. Salamu alaikum rahmatullahi katu wassalamu ala mani taba huda lil ikwani wa wati fi din. Hal salam bikum kif halukukum ma Allah. My brothers and sisters and those who will show up here in the future, I give you my salam and my peace. And I will continue on with the tafsir of this beautiful surah, Surah Fetih, and the verse is number 11. There's other verses follow this, but we're going to be entering a period now of this particular part of the verse that was revealed to our Prophet ﷺ. And it has significance with my population inside the United States and other populations as well, but also for the Muslimin, because here we have something that Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is revealed, but we have a set of people. They are the same people, but they're in a whole different atmosphere, the way they think, the whole thing. We call them Bedouins or Arabi, desert Arabs. I mean, there's many different names they have. And here we will begin talking about them because Subhanahu wa Ta'ala exposed some things about them. Let me give you an analogy of what I'm talking about. You know, when I was a little boy in Compton, California, I remember, as a little boy, I only knew Compton, especially as a young boy, 5, 6, 7 years old, I knew Compton. And I know we go sometimes, I thought it was still Compton. My mom and dad would go to this. I remember this Japanese restaurant just outside of Compton at that time. I didn't know that, but I thought it was still Compton. But I start noticing people that came from LA, they were coming to the elementary school. I saw they were totally different. They were black. But I saw their mannerisms, the way they spoke, because they were from Alabama, Arkansas, and so forth and so on. I noticed a difference. And they had a lot of different things and customs about them too. I never quite understand them, even though they're African Americans, yes, but they were different. This is how this is. Yes, they're Arabs, but they have a whole different mindset. They're just totally different. Not all, but a great majority of them. And let me give you a backdrop on what I'm talking about here. Here I don't want to show you this one here yet. What I wanted to show you was okay, we go with this one, yes. Here, I want to give you a picture, like to kind of formulate my brother and sister, especially in the United States, Saudi Arabia, which you see there, the city of Yathrib. This is the name before it was changed to Medina. And so it's sitting almost near the coast near the Red Sea. It's over here to your left, you see the Nile, Alexandria, Cairo, Egypt, so forth and so on. This is why you always heard me say, they call it Middle East. They call it also Jazira Arab, but I like to also call it Northeast Africa because this is the home of the Afro-Arabs. And so anyway, you can see here what we're talking about as far as the geography goes. And then we have what I showed you previously. We have to show the migration to the Medina. You had Jews, Yahud, the Yehudi, the Jews, that's in Arabic. And you had other Arabs that came in from different parts to settle into Yathrib or Medina. And as you can see here, the migration here to Yathrib. So it was a pretty thriving place And but outside of this area dwelled the desert Arab, and they are totally different in mannerisms, laws, customs, and so forth. I can't stress that. I laugh because it's like they're from another part of the galaxy. And they're a lot of times they're misunderstood, and they're not well understood. Misunderstood and not understood is misunderstood, I should say. Just I'll leave it at that. They're misunderstood, but they are very clannish in that their clan, their Kabila, is the most important aspect to them. Yes, a lot of them are Muslims, but outside of their clan, they don't seem to have the same loyalties. This is why the Islam had a hard time with the Bedouin because of their traditions. And you got to understand something. Even in the harsh Sahara Jazeera Arab, okay, the Arabian desert, they are similar to that in the Sahara of the North Africa, the Sahara in English. And you have the same kind of mindset to a degree. You have the Tuareg, and you have the Amazigh, and so forth and so on. And you have also Arab Arab tribes who came into the desert as well. So there's a unwritten code and law that's in the deserts, in North Africa and in the Jazeera Arab. And they have their codes, and they're strict by them. And they have fused these customs and codes with Islam. And so this is what makes them so different and odd. If you remember the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he talked about, there's a hadith, and you know, when the first time I read it, I kind of laughed because I can imagine how the Sahaba felt. One of the Bedouin came in from the desert, and they were trying to get him to come to Islam. He came inside the masjid and urinated. That's right, he came inside the masjid and urinated, and of course they wanted to take him out, but the Prophet ﷺ stopped him. And he attributed this to their backwardness, jahiliyyah, and so forth and so on. But that's just to go to show you how they are. And I'll show you this picture here. This is them there. They live in the open desert, so you can imagine they deal with heat, okay, and they deal with extreme temperatures. They know the Sahara, the desert, like the back of their hand. They know how to navigate in the day and the night. And so they are totally different individuals. But yet and still, we talk about these. But the Prophet ﷺ did send many of prominent Sahaba to some of the Bedouin in that desert, so they can learn this Quranic Arabic better. This is a true statement. So not all of them are backward, and not all of them are reviewed as hostile or enemies to Islam. But they are known a lot for their treachery. And if you understand about them too, they fought wars over women. They had codes of the desert, as I explained to you before. The Bedouin, they would say if there's one young son, he saw a girl from another clan in the desert, and he wanted her, but something happened, they couldn't do it. A lot of times the clan would go to kidnap her, and wars would be created over this. Or they would come back and they would negotiate. They would bring a Qadi who was specializing in the law of the Sahara, and then this Qadi would make a decision and so forth. This is how it is. This is a different way of life, totally different way of life than the life that we understand. And even the Arabs who lived in the Medina and other places like this, these guys are totally different. So I give you that backdrop just for you to understand like what's happening with this verse. So verse 11, and I'll read this in the English language. Subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the desert Arabs, okay, the Bedouin, this is what he's talking about, who lag behind will say to thee. Now, Subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about here, he's telling the prophet what he uncovered about them. We were engaged in looking after our flocks and herds and our families. Do thou then ask forgiveness for us? They say with their tongues what is not in their hearts. Say, who then has any power at all to intervene on your behalf with Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, if his will is to give you some loss or give you some profit? But Allah is well acquainted with all that you do. Here we're talking about a case where we had where the Prophet sent some emissaries to these particular tribes, clans, to join them in Umrah. Now you got an Umrah. At this time, you got to remember something. The Quraysh and the other Arab tribes they were still strong, and there's still animosity between them. They had not concluded their animosity. The Muslims had not taken Mecca at this time. They had fought the wars, and so they had not reached this treaty yet, and they were close to reaching this treaty when the Prophet _, decided to take the Muslims back to Mecca for Umrah. But they stopped him, and I gave you a story many times about Khalid Saifullah. He wasn't Saifullah at that time, but he was the commander of the pagan Arab tribes who were fighting against the Muslims. He was sent to go to stop the Muslims from entering Mecca at that time and to engage them if it need be. But he didn't engage them. Bilal met them, and I told you about what the conversation that they had and so forth and so on. So anyway, they went to them. These particular, what they call Mukhalifina, these are the ones who in Arabic who are laggers, who lag behind, so forth and so on, of the desert Arabs. They didn't go. So subhanahu wa ta'ala exposed them in this. He exposed them and to the Prophet about their real motives behind that. And so it was a whole list of things that happened that happened in this. And it's a beautiful dialogue that occurred between them and the Prophet, which I will get to, inshallah ta'ala. So again, this verse, the desert Arabs were living outside the Medina. As I told you, the tribes that they had. I had another map, but I don't see it here now. I think I must have accidentally took it out. This is okay. Anyway, this you see Medina there. They were outside of their the Medina area, and again, like I said, the desert Arabs were living outside of Medina, and that their words to the Prophet was dishonest. Allah Ta'ala exposed their hypocrisy to the Prophet, as I told you. He exposed it, and he did. He exposed this, and and the Prophet then had to deal with them with their treachery. And again, he invited them because they said they came. They said they had made bay'ah to the Prophet and to subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now it's time for them to get tested. And there's a whole series of verses here attributed to them. And subhanahu wa ta'ala was giving us a message on why there's about there's 6 verses here that dealt with the desert Arab, the Bedouin, the Arabi in Arabic. And so, it's interesting because of what happened and the situation, because this is a lesson. This is a lesson, again, to show us, we Muslims, we have African Americans who say they come to Islam. They're going to get tested. Somebody is going to test them. Subhanahu wa ta'ala says that. He's just not going to let you give your shahadatain and you go about your business. You're going to get tested. And those weaker ones fall down by the wayside. The stronger ones take it, adapt to it, and move on and wait for the next test. Because subhanahu wa ta'ala will test your faith. See, so this is what happened in this situation here. And he's testing the desert Arabs, the Bedouin. He's testing them now to see what their real faith was. And he uncovered this when the prophet sent emissaries to go ask them to come to join them. They didn't want to do it. It was okay for them to say they were Muslims. They said they would believe, but you heard what Subhanahu wa ta'ala said. It's not yet what they say from their tongue is not in their hearts, because he knew. And so they were exposed. And then there's questions asked, if they believe in Allah, so why did they have no love for the Muslims? It was uncovered as well. And I won't get back into the other verse, which is 12, but this kind of covers this somewhat. But they showed they also didn't have any regard for the Muslims. So let me ask you something. We see this today. The person said he's Muslim, but he has nothing to do with the Muslims. He doesn't like other Muslims. So how can you be a Muslim? You see what I mean? The hypocrisy in that. And this is what happened in this situation here, where you say you're Muslim and you believe the Prophet ﷺ, and you said this is the true religion, and you adopted that. But yet and still, you have bad thoughts about the Muslims. You wish bad for the Muslims. You wish for the Muslims to fail. What kind of Muslim is that? But we have that today. We have people that swear that they're Muslims, but they have animosity towards other Muslims. I'm not talking about you have a dispute with some other brothers over some iman or some type of thing about Tawheed, and you argue about that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about straight out and out dislike and animosity towards all Muslims. And this is what we have this today. They say they're Muslim. This is in the Muslim states a lot. They say they're Muslim, but they hate other Muslims. It doesn't make sense, huh? But that's why, again, Subhanahu wa ta'ala has exposed it as a lesson. 1,400 years later, we still gripped with this type of problem today. They're not desert Arabs living in Jahiliyyah anymore. They are modern Muslims, so-called modern Muslims, but they do not like the other Muslims. They don't like them, especially the strong ones. They don't like them. So this is what we know. And then we know that they tried to deceive the Prophet and ask the Prophet to make dua for them. And I'll get into that. This is very interesting, part of their trickery. This is the same thing for lessons learned with my population and elsewhere too. When you have this type of, when people come to you and you know you feel that they don't have sincerity, and then they'll come back to you later and say, yeah, please pray for us. They don't want your prayer, but they say that to show that they have iman, but in fact they don't have it. It's deception. Nifaq in Arabic is this word. And so this is, again, Subhanahu wa ta'ala always gives you lessons in the Quran about people. The people who love the Muslims and the people who do not like the Muslims. And the Muslims who are inside the Ummah, inside the Muslim, the orbit of the Muslims. But he exposed them like these here by showing you what they are. And that's why we should understand the Quran, so that way we can understand our role in this. And we have a lot of enemies, brothers and sisters. We have, even inside the Ummah, like this here. We have this, in this case, 14 years ago, there were desert Arabs, the Bedouin. Here we have others. They sit in LA, they sit in Texas, they sit here in Fez, Morocco, they sit in many parts of the world. And their animosity towards us is great. Animosity towards us. They say Muslim, they'll talk to you as a Muslim, they'll even pray as a Muslim, but yet and still they have nothing but animosity towards all Muslims. And so this is the lesson that Subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us in this verse 11, is to show you that Subhanahu wa ta'ala is all-knowing. And Subhanahu wa ta'ala, in his wisdom, also gives some of us, or you'll get some premonition, and you'll get something inside you to tell you, hey, you know what, this guy, Yahya, he come over to me, he's talking to me, and he said this and that, but I feel he's not sincere. You just might be right. The angels who write in your book, they might be talking to you and telling you as well, and giving you the feeling that these people that came to you, they're not sincere. This happens a lot. And so you should be aware of that. But also, you got to remember something. We talk about the intention. We've been talking about that the last couple of weeks. I've been giving you classes on intention. Here we have the prime example of the intention. We have the intention if it's sincere or not. And this here, the desert Arabs in this case were insincere. They were not sincere. And the Prophet was given evidence against them, and then he went to have a conversation with them. But I want to also go into some other things here. Okay, now, also here, remember we've been talking about the Bedouin, Bedouin, the pledge, the special pledge, the all-encompassing pledge to Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and to a Prophet alayhi salam. Here again, we get tested, just like we got brothers and sisters tested in the United States and say they're now Muslim. The minute some adversity comes to them, we want to see if they will stay Muslim. Many of them falter back. They'll jump out of Islam until the crisis is finished, and then they try to jump back into Islam after the crisis. You can't do that, brothers and sisters. That's ridda. You're gone. If you jump out of the religion because of some pressures that were put on you at school or at work, and you say, okay, you know what? I'm not Muslim. I'll stay. I will disbelieve. I'll stop praying for 2 weeks. I won't go to masjid for 2 weeks until it's clear. And then once it clears, I go back to the masjid about 3 weeks later. Brothers and sisters, it doesn't work like this. Subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing you. And we've seen this even when I was there in the United States. I saw brothers, remember after 9/11, because I just came to Islam 3 years after that. It was hot and heavy. And I saw brothers do the same thing. They were scared because when they would go to masjid, they used to see police. At that time, it was still hot. And like 2005, when I came there, and it was still hot. Police would show up, undercover agents would show up. I mean, it was a hot area. So it was almost like the masjid was a place for the gangsters. And they would show up. We have brothers that were terrified. They didn't know if they would get shot or they would lose their job. They didn't understand. So they stopped coming to masjid. And I remember, I'll never forget this one brother. He said to me, he said, I'm going to stop going to the masjid for about a month. And I'm going to act like a disbeliever. I said, what about prayer inside the home? He said, no, I'm not going to do anything. I'll become Muslim about 4 weeks, 5 weeks later. That's what he told me. And we have that, and it's very prominent today. You can't do that, brothers and sisters. You can't do this. That's ridda, and you're out. You cannot play. You can't go to Islam one day, 2 days later, you have adversity. Your boss, he said, I heard, Yahya, you were Muslim. And then all of a sudden, yes, you can deceive a person to save certain things, to deceive them, but you don't stop praying. If he doesn't let you pray inside your office, then you pray somewhere else. You go to the park. You can't do that. You pray in your car. You can't do that. Then you go home, you pray. You just don't stop prayer and be a Muslim because of some pressure. That pressure is because Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is testing you. Remember that, brothers and sisters. In Islam, it's not like you can be a Muslim 1, 2, 3 days per week. Then you feel the pressure from your boss, or you feel the pressure from moms and pops. And then you say, okay, I'm getting ready to go see mom and pop for about 3 or 4 days. I won't be a Muslim then. I'll eat pork. I'll do everything else. So you just made apostasy for 4 days. And then you think you just come back like that. It doesn't work like that, brothers and sisters. So these are lessons that we should understand here. Now, as I said before, these particular Mukhalifina min Medina, they're the desert Arabs who lag behind, who did not want to go to Umrah. These people possess bad thoughts of Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and the Prophet alayhi salam. They had these bad thoughts. And again, we go back to the same issue. How can Muslim, he say he's Muslim, and yet he has bad thoughts about Subhanahu wa Ta'ala? He doesn't trust that he's actually there to protect, or he's actually there. And they have doubt about the Prophet alayhi salam. And then the Ummah itself, they don't like Muslims. So you have to ask the question, what kind of Muslim is this? Is he really actually a Muslim or not? And as I said before, to expect evil and harm to the Muslims. These people kind of, it's like you sitting there saying, you know what? I'm sitting in my home. I'm hoping the Muslims, I hope something happened to them. I know that masjid over there that's 2 miles away from the house. I hope somebody come to burn it. How could you say that if you're Muslim? But this is what's happening here. But we have that. And we have to ask why. This is why the lessons here like this, they help us. And what do you do about Muslims who say they're Muslim and say this and do this? You get away from them, brothers and sisters. You stay away from them because they're an enemy. You can't lag. You can't go left and right. You're supposed to go straight. You can't go back and forth. You have to understand that. When you make your pledge to Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, it's for the good and the bad. You just don't, not everything's going good. You have prosperity. You have money in your pocket. You're working good. And then the minute some adversity, you say, I ain't Muslim now. And then when the money or the prosperity comes back, then you say, hey, you know, I'm Muslim again. It doesn't work like that, brothers and sisters. Remember that. This desert Arab pledge to Allah and the Messenger, surely this pledge was not sincere. It was not sincere, brothers and sisters. They know that now. Subhanahu wa ta'ala exposed that. And it's a lesson, again, for all of us. A good lesson for all of us to understand. We have pledges. We're going to get tested. We're going to get tested. You may be living in an area where the imam knows that you come to the masjid, and the imams now, they have, you know, on their computer, they have all the people who come to the masjid. So he sends out a flyer through the computer telling everybody to come to Jummah Friday. But what's been happening? We have a lot of police. We have a lot of the different individuals who don't like Muslims out there. What are you going to do? Are you going to face the odds, make this jihad and go inside the masjid? Or are you going to sit home? Now, of course, we have other things involved. If you have an employer who tells you something, you got to be very careful with that because you have a livelihood. You live in the United States and you don't have that many resources to assist you in case he fire you. You got to be very careful of that. So you have to act accordingly. You have to act. If you have to use deception and tell him, no, I'm not going to go over there no more. I'm going to stop going to the masjid. Okay, stop going in front of him. But why can't you go Saturday and Sunday? Huh? Or Friday night? You're not working. Go then. But he doesn't want you going during the work hours. Okay, fine. You have one prayer, maybe that's a prayer or the door. He doesn't. So you make that up at home. But Asr, you're home now, you make Asr. You don't stop being a Muslim altogether. You can't do that, brothers and sisters, but I know Muslims that do this. You can't make Ridda. This is Ridda and Deen. This apostasy from the religion for 3-4 days and then come back. It doesn't work like that. So those who remain behind, the Bedouins would say to you, our properties, our families, they occupied us. So ask forgiveness for us. This is very interesting. They played the game with the Prophet. They tried to play, but it didn't work because the Prophet ﷺ gave them something, a response. And then again, part of the verse where he's talking about that, because they felt they're getting caught. Their treachery is being exposed. So they want to know who could intercede on their behalf with Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And, they were running a game, okay? The bottom line, they were trying to run a game on Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and they tried to run a game on the Prophet ﷺ. It's better for them to say, if you be honest, if you want to come back, I come to your house and say, hey, man, look, let's go to the masjid now. I know there's a lot of turmoil out there now, but we should go to the masjid and support the masjid. We should still make our prayer. We shouldn't let the enemies of Islam stop us from going to the masjid. And our good brother here, Muhammad, who's sitting in the house, he said, yeah, I'm sorry, man. Me and my wife talked about it. She don't want me to go. She's afraid for me. And she's afraid maybe if my job find out if there's a fight, I get in a fight, or what if I get arrested? I can't afford any days off. They will fire me. I really hear him say something like this than to do some other things. Because that's between you and Subhanahu wa Ta'ala now. No one's going to, you have genuine fear and you have a family there. Your wife says, hey, don't go. Muhammad, I'm afraid that you'll get into a fight and you guys get arrested, or they start trying to fight you and the police will arrest the Muslims only and let the disbelievers alone. This happens. So I'd rather hear that than do the other thing. You see what I'm saying, brothers and sisters? So now let's get to the part here. A dialogue was going. It's transpired now. They've been exposed, and so now they want to go to the Prophet ﷺ and ask him to make a dua for them, to ask Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to forgive them. So this hiwar is one Arabic, means discussion between two people, and this discussion transpired between the Mukallifina min Arabi, the desert, the lag behind, and the among the Bedouin, and our Prophet ﷺ. Beginning of the dialogue here is interesting. That is, Allah's decision will be based on the knowledge that He has about the reality of your actions. If your actions deserve the punishment, I pray for your forgiveness. Now, this is good. The Prophet ﷺ told good. This is a lot of wisdom in what he said. Then he said, my prayer will not save you from Allah's punishment. Yeah, you see, even though He will pray for you, but Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, He says, will make the decision on what to do. If your actions do not deserve the punishment, I do not pray for your forgiveness. Again, cleverness. And with the Prophet was telling the Bedouin, he's telling them, hey, I can't save you. I can go pray for you, Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, but if you don't deserve the punishment, then I don't need to pray for you. Essentially, that's for your forgiveness. Then he says, my failure to pray will not do any harm to you. Everything is in His control, Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's control, not mine. And no one's empty words can deceive Him. Now he's telling them basically, I know what you are. I know what you're trying to do. I know that you are what you're trying to do here. Then he says, therefore, even if I accept as true what you say, saying that they said that they didn't want to go because they had to attend to their flocks and everything, but that's not the case, because the next verse over told what they felt. But Prophet ﷺ is giving them cleverness and wisdom in his response to them. Therefore, even if I accept as true what you say, then also pray for your forgiveness. On this basis, it will be vain and without result. This is what he said in the discussion between them. See, so he gave them this food of wisdom. And I know they had to leave scratching their head, because the way he talked to them was that like of a prophet. And he explained to them. And so they had no other way to go. See, so he said, yeah, okay, I'll pray for you on this situation here, but Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will punish you. But if you have empty words and so forth and so on, even if I pray for you, it'll be vain on my part and without result. I mean, it's clever what he said. Very, very clever what the Prophet ﷺ said about that. And when he reaches the truth of allegiance and the risk of reneging fulfillment. Again, the desert Arabs at this time were noted for this. This would be the precursors, brothers and sisters, to the Ridda Wars. The Ridda Wars were the apostasy wars and harder Ridda. These are the apostasy wars that would come down later. Some at the time of, especially at the time, Subhanahu wa Ta'ala called up our Prophet ﷺ. He passed on. And we had now the same Bedouin that we're talking about today, and many others begin to do things, and it caused wars. And a lot of good Muslims lost their lives because of that. And also, close to the time of the Prophet's passing, we even had some of these desert Arabs, create their own quote-unquote prophets. And one of the major ones, Musaylima the Kadab. And you should know about him because there's a lot of lessons in that. And you should read the letter that the Prophet ﷺ sent to him. And it's a beautiful letter and whatnot. Musaylima Kadab was an evil man. And he said he was a prophet. And many began to follow him. And if you think about something, brothers and sisters, why you should learn this lesson about him, he's like, again, a precursor to the Dajjal. Remember I told you about him, the Christian called Antichrist, who's coming. We're going to start having these people's coming. I believe Trump is one of these. I really believe that. I believe Trump is one of these precursors of the disciples of this Dajjal, because he's going to be murdering Muslims all over the world. And this Musaylima Kadab, meaning the Musaylima, the liar, and his name is Musaylima. He's a liar. That's what the prophet. That's what he coined him as. Musaylima, Musaylima Kadab. He was a liar, and so this man caused the death of a lot, and he sent many people to the fire who joined him, and so forth and so on. So it's lessons to be learned, and this is why this lesson here is important, because you should understand the Ridda Wars. And why I say that, because when you read these Ridda Wars, the apostasy wars, there's a lot of stuff in there I believe that's going to transpire in the future, maybe not in my lifetime. When you start having some of the most craziest and evilest people will start to take power, and there's going to be more wholesale killing than we see today, which the Prophet ﷺ said, he called it al-harish. Okay, it's just relentless killing. We're starting to see that now everywhere. United States, of course, is most prevalent than any other part of the world. But South Africa has a lot of killing as well. And there's killings in Western Europe as well. So it's starting to happen all over the world. We're starting to see this. But these Ridda Wars, if you see this, you start to see how you start having followers pop up out of nowhere, and people start to follow them. And they're blind followers. They're starting to even kill for them. So this is what we should be mindful of. So we should be a student of history as well, Muslims, because you should understand the history, because you start to see things play out now, as the Prophet ﷺ said. So you should understand this. You say, well, how can I get the correlation? You understand this and read the full tafsir on verse 11. This is Surah 48. And then read about the Ridda Wars. And they're very interesting. They even had one woman that said that she was a prophetess. She was a prophet as well. You had Musaylima the Kadab, and then you had, I forgot the other, can't think of his name. They caused a lot. There was four of them. They caused a lot of turmoil in the Jazira Arab at that time, brothers and sisters. A lot of turmoil. And when the prophet passed, it was even worse. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he then sent, now we have the Saif Allah to go to fight these desert Arabs, and who did, in some desert Arabs, even there, and this is going to show you how fanatical, there's unwritten rules inside the Kabyle of the desert. You don't kill your brother unjustly, especially he's come from your same clan. You don't. But these guys begin to do that because those accepted Islam. They did not want to relinquish Islam, but many of the elders of the Kabyle said no, and they began to persecute them, even kill their own clan members. This is how crazy it became. And one of them was Malik, I can't think of his name now, and what Kabyle it was. He began to persecute the people that who wanted to stay Muslim. But he felt now he was clear. He said he was not going to give his money. And this is one of the issues, too, that led to this, is that they said they didn't want to give up their because you had to pay zakat. And they didn't want to do that anymore. They said, the prophet's gone. I don't need to do this anymore. He's asked, I'll pray, I'll do this, but I will not give zakat. Well, you can't make a dissension because zakat is a major pillar, right? You can't make dissensions. They did make a distinction by trying to put zakat over here and salat over here. You can't do that. They're all lumped together, the five. You can't just cast one aside and the others you do. You cannot do that. And so this was what happened. This is a precursor to get you to understand the mindset of many of the desert Arabs at the time. That's why I'm covering only this one here right now, and we'll go to the others because I want you to get in the mindset to get to understand about these the desert Arab. And again, this is we get into issues again, and I'm not going to get heavy into race, because a lot of these guys that are out there, they're black folk. A lot of the Bedouins are black folk in Saudi Arabia. That's why we have to be careful. Our brothers who get on TV and stuff and get to talking about the Arabs, because you have to ask the question, which one are you talking about? And it's funny, again, we go into this issue and they'll call this man Caucasian. He looked like brothers out there in the United States, many. They'll call this guy a Tubab. They'll say, this one's Tubab. These guys are darker than I am. So how can they be Tubab? And these guys, and you got to remember something. If you heard my classes talking about the desert Arabs at this time, they had mixed with the interlopers that came from the north. So this mixture stayed in place. But they had always been, the original, always been black folk. Always been black folk. They were not anything other than that. And so this is why I want to give you the backdrop. And here you got a picture of a good example of the clan that's living in the desert. They live in tents. They live carefree. They live a very slow life, but they have a lot of rules, but they still have ways about themselves, but you don't mess with the clan and you don't mess with their women either, because they'll go to war and kill you over that, because there's a code, as I said to you before, in the desert that you may not understand. It's almost like the gangster codes that we have in the United States, Compton, Los Angeles, ATL and places, where all the brothers are hanging, Kansas City, St. Louis, where the brothers have the hood, they have a code. You don't go mess with the women in the hood in this area here. You don't mess with these women in this particular set. And this is how they are. You can't come and start to mess with their ladies over there. They'll kill you for that. And so they had unwritten codes, and this is just the way it was in those days. And it's still this way. Do you know they still have the Bedouins out there, and they're still out in the desert? If anybody wants to study them, you should study them. They're very interesting people. And you're not studying white folks or Tubab. They're black. They've been black since time immemorial. They were the first ones there in the Saudi desert. So they were the first, quote unquote, just part of the Jazeera Arab. They were black. And he's still black today. See, so, we get that understood. They have white ones out there. Yes, they have mixtures, but a lot of them are still black. And this is just a simple fact. I give you that because we're in Surah Fetah, and Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is giving us a lesson about them. We're getting a lesson about the desert Arab and about how many of them use treachery and so forth and so on. And many of them were backward and they were not to be trusted, even though they said they were Muslims. And they were finally exposed when you had the Ridda Wars. But then after that, then they became into the fold and they didn't make too much more noises. And even to go to show you how bad it was at one time. When you left from if you look at the top there, when you start to leave from the Mecca region and you go across the desert, I told you about a word before called muharaba. It was bad. These are desert Arabs as well, but they make their living by raiding, different, you have trading caravans through the desert. They would raid them, kill, take their profits and so forth and so on. So you had this type of thing still going on. But when the Muslims finally developed their Khalifa, they put an end to that. This is where this word muharaba, that means a person who killed people out in the open and robbed them. And so this is, again, part of the desert Arab. And I'm trying to get you to understand, because you should have a well-rounded education about Islam, not just learn about the Salat and Som, but to learn the history, to learn about people, because this is what a Muslim should do. You should learn about that. Just like when we talk about all the scholarship in West Africa, you should learn about that. You should learn about the kingdoms, the Islamic kingdoms, the sultanates that we had. You see my class, I talked about many of the sultanates there in West Africa, and they had them in East Africa and in South Africa as well. But you should learn this to round out your education. Don't limit yourself and put guards over your eyes. You as a Muslim, you should get as much education as you can, talking to learn about the people, learn about the facts of where Mecca is and where the Medina is, and about the Jazira Arab, because it's important for the history for you to get an understanding about this, and also to understand the history of the Afro-Arabs who are prominent in this religion. We got to understand that. Again, they're Afro-Arabs because the Afro-Arab belt comes from Morocco, and you go a little bit south to Mauritania, across to Egypt, across the Red Sea, as you see here, into the peninsula, what they call Jazira Arab. You got to the south is Yemen, then you see Oman there. Then you have UAE and so forth. UAE is not classified as that. But Yemen, Oman, and Saudi Arabia is the end of the Afro-Arab belt. So I wanted to highlight those things for you, brothers and sisters, to give you a good rounded education. Because again, we go back to issues. We see things in the news. We always see the Tubab Arab and so from so on. And so you turn off, because I understand. I lived there. You see the Jordanians, the Syrians, they're white. Some of them you didn't even know the Arabs. They look just like Tubab Europeans. But I wanted to give you this so you have the backdrop, because we'll start to get to other verses here, inshallah. I'll start to explain them. But now you have an understanding about the Desert Arab. That's what we're going to be talking about here. If I just talked about the verse and didn't talk about the people, you can be left kind of in a lurch. So now you have an indication of the Desert Arab. I showed you them. I showed you who they are and how they are different. Okay, bottom line, they are different. They are Arabs, but they're different. They hold to certain traditions that are different, and they have certain codes of the desert that are different. Same thing in Sahara. They are totally different. Okay, and their thinking and their mannerisms and so forth, so on, totally different. So this is how it is in Islam, and I wanted to give you that picture. So my brothers and sisters, I'll be ending this here on this particular verse, and I'm hoping that you follow this in the future, because this is a good rounded education. Bottom line for us to understand the surahs, how they were sent down, and what Subhanahu wa Ta'ala was saying to help you, because 1400 years later, it's still pertinent for you, black man in America, and your family. This is important because it gives you some lessons, because you have Mukhalifina min the Rajul Aswad too. You have laggers behind the black man, which I just said in Arabic. You have those kind of black folk too, don't you? They're in the United States. Yes, they came on the same slave ships, but they have a totally different mindset, don't they? And I saw that when I was in Compton and when the people in LA. And I'll end this with this. It's not related. In some ways it is related. Do you remember the movie, The Boys in the Hood? Remember that movie came out? I've seen it 18,000 times, especially when it came out. It was good. But it pointed out the divisions of black folk. You remember when I can't think of what's his name? I can't think of the actor's name, and the other brother, Chestnut, I think his last name, and the other brother's I can't think of his name now, but anyway, and it was Lawrence Fishburne. Remember them? They went and traveled into Compton. You remember that part of that? And when they came out of the car, you seen the way the two brothers acting. They were frightened. He said, "Hey, this is Compton. You see what I mean?" It's similar to this situation here. You go into the desert, you encounter these guys. You don't know how they're going to be. You see, that's how it is. And I'm just giving you that analogy so you can understand. Here, the brothers come from LA. They're Crenshaw Mafia. I mean, in that area. Now they're coming into Compton, where I was raised. And you should see the fear in their faces. They were looking around, and they even told Lawrence Fishburne, "Hey, man, this is Compton." They had fear and they had apprehension. That's how it was about the desert Arab. So I hope you get the analogy, what I'm saying, my brothers and sisters. So I'll leave you with that. And again, my brothers and sisters who will see this in the future and everything. And I'm hoping that you get something out of this, my brothers and sisters, because I always do. I love talking about this because it's part of our religion to understand what happened in the past and how we can use it for the future. So I'll leave you with this. Assalamu alaikum. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.